Hey, hello. Welcome to this codcast. It's called Gimme Empathy. I'm the host of it, Scott Mercer. I'm a musician and a community radio broadcaster here in Brisbane, Australia. And this is the thing I do every 2 weeks where I talk to someone and then you listen to it too. My guest in this episode is Keir Nuttall. Who is Keir Nuttall? Keir Nuttall is also a musician. He's a much more successful musician than I am. Keir has done lots of musical things. He was in a band called Transport in Brisbane in the mid-2000s. He has a comedy folk troubadour alter ego called Frankie Walnut. He is in an acoustic guitar duo called Django Braveheart. He co-wrote the musical Muriel's Wedding, and he is the chief musical collaborator and husband of Kate Miller-Heidke. I first met Keir years ago at the Woodford Folk Festival when I interviewed him in character as Frankie Walnut, which I've done 2 or 3 times now, actually. And I caught up with him at Woodford this year. It was great to see him. And as fun as it is to interview a character, I was really interested in hearing Keir's whole story as himself, because we had such good chats outside of the Frankie Walnut stuff. I think the first time we met, we talked for about 2 hours in a tent about comedy and politics and things. So I was in Melbourne a little while ago, and I had the chance to catch up with Keir on the hottest day I think I've ever experienced. When I left Keir's house, it was 44 degrees outside, which I still think is actually better than a Brisbane 36, because it's at least it's a dry oven blasted heat down in Melbourne, and not a sweltering, boiling sort of heat like we have here in Brisbane. So Keir is going to talk all about his life and career and music and things in this episode. And at one point, pretty early on, the conversation does touch on suicide. And if that's not a thing you want to hear about, then maybe just skip out the first 10, 15 minutes or so. And at the end, he plays a Frankie Walnut song as well, which is really delightful. This is episode number 51 with Keir Nuttall. So does Ernie understand like the value of the $2 that he's getting yet?
Not really. I think but he knows it's money and he knows it's worth something. But he keeps trying to unwrap gold coins because he thinks they have chocolate inside them.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah. So he doesn't fully understand it. Yeah.
As long as he hasn't tried to eat them, I guess.
Yeah, he does. He puts them in his mouth. He tries to eat everything. He actually is oral fixative, which is... actually, I'm oral fixative. I know that I am. And I think he probably takes after me in that respect. Yeah.
What does that mean, oral fixative?
It means that you interface with the world via your mouth. I mean, he gets comfort. Lots of kids his age do, obviously, from breastfeeding, gets comfort from putting things in his mouth. But I like having things in my mouth as well.
Well, you're a smoker for a while, weren't you?
Big smoker, and then also nicotine lozenges. Like I smoked a pack a day for years, and then gave up for about 5 years, and then walked into a pharmacy one day and saw nicotine lozenges and got addicted to nicotine lozenges. Like out of the blue, I wasn't addicted to nicotine.
Oh.
And then I was on them for a couple of years, and then a friend of mine introduced me to Swedish snus, which is the mouth tobacco.
Oh, yeah. It's
amazing. Like and then I was on that for about 4 years, up until only a year ago. And I used to order it online, which made giving it up easy. It's illegal like everywhere except Sweden and Norway, I think. And so you have to order it online. And so to give up, all I had to do was not place that order because it takes 2 weeks to clear customs and everything.
So what do you want to do now?
Just lots of coffee, yeah, which,
But you don't get a tactile sensation from coffee.
No, and I chew gum. But
there you go.
Yeah, but it's not... there's just going to be a hole there, like in my mouth. There's a great hole where my mouth is that cannot be filled.
Do you do teeth drumming? Like, do you make beats with?
No, only a little bit like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Only when I've had too much coffee.
I've always done that, the teeth drumming.
Oh, yeah.
I'm wondering if that's like having a grinding effect. Is it bad for my teeth?
Yeah, I think it is.
Oh.
You know, I got an occlusal splint recently from grinding my teeth all the time, probably because I drink so much coffee. But
Oh, yeah.
and I have to wear it overnight, and it's quite good actually. I quite like it because it's another thing in my mouth, and I wake up in the night, and it's made of really hard, kind of plasticky stuff that's molded exactly to my top teeth. So I do this in the night. I go and bite, like I slap the bottom teeth against the splint, which is probably not what they have in mind when they give you one to stop you wearing your teeth down from grinding them. But
Did you ever have a retainer when you were growing up?
no, I never had any of that stuff. That's why I have like protruding teeth and no chin. Yeah.
So you grew up in Toowoomba. Like, was that what was the general oral hygiene of the town at the time? Because there's a dentistry school out there, right?
Is there? Yeah.
I thought that's where all the dentists go to train.
Yeah, right. Wow, I didn't know that. I know that you can go there to get a fireworks license. Is that right? Am I making it up? Oh, no, that's probably Canberra. No, it's Toowoomba. Yeah, it's Toowoomba. I don't know why, but you can get your fireworks license. A friend of mine had to go and get his fireworks license, and he went to Toowoomba. But yeah, the dental thing. No, I had a dentist who I was friends with his son, and his son killed himself. Was my first friend to kill himself. That went dark all of a sudden, but like, yeah, but that was my dentist for years, and he had a bad relationship with his son.
Did that happen a lot with your friends from Toowoomba? Did a lot of them die by suicide?
Yeah, most recently, I think halfway through last year, me and a couple of my old friends, I'm friends with a lot of the people I was friends with when I was a teenager in Toowoomba still. Two of us caught up earlier, like late last year rather, and we counted 9 of our friends who'd killed themselves from our sort of, wider circle since we were 17. So, yeah.
And are these people who stayed in Toowoomba?
Not all of them, no. When you see the stuff about male suicide everywhere, it's insane. But it really is a real thing, and I know that's more than other friends of mine who grew up in Melbourne or even Brisbane. I don't know why.
Do you have any theories?
It's possible. I was going to say lower socioeconomic, conditions for those people that did it, but it's not actually true. At least 2 of them. One of them's the son of a dentist. Well, that was his stepdad, I suppose. But that's not a one theory fits all. I don't really know. Drugs probably played a part. There was a lot of drugs in Toowoomba when I was a kid, and I'm sure there probably still are. There was not a lot to do, and lots of drugs. And drugs when you're a teenager are really, really fun. So you don't, and of course you're not thinking about any long-term consequences. Although I wouldn't blame suicide on drugs either. So, but they can definitely like leave you depressed if you give it too much of a nudge and you run out of your happy balance chemically. I think that can probably lead to depression. But there's got to be something else going on there. I don't know what. And these weren't like unreconstructed men who, pushed their emotions down, which is a classic kind of a theory presented for it. I'm sure that plays a role for some people, but a lot of these people were not that,
Was Toowoomba rough?
Yep. But I don't know if it's really rougher than necessarily anywhere else. I know there's a lot of angry young men there. I know I got punched in the head unprovokedly at least 3 or 4 times. I say 3 or 4 because I've probably punched in the head a total of about 6 times, and 3 of the other times I was provoking.
Right.
But
had you punched someone else in the head before?
No. I only ever punched, 2 people in the head, one in grade 6 and one in like grade 8, and both of them were my friends. No, I was just, it's like in the valley on a Saturday night. It doesn't feel safe. It was like that, I guess. It was that situation. It was like a coward punch or whatever they call it now. I certainly don't feel safe in the valley on a Saturday night as a 40-year-old. I didn't feel safe. I would not feel safe in Toowoomba. I don't think I'd feel safe in any urban centre after like 10 p.m. on a Friday or Saturday night. It's just The Walking Dead.
Did a lot of your friends play music growing up?
Yeah. But a lot of them didn't too. I mean, I wanted to be a musician from early on, and that there was a cool, like in I don't know, the late 80s in Toowoomba. Sounds absurd, but like there was actually like cool, people organising gigs independently because of the community radio station there for DDB, and they'd have all kind of like, they'd have Radio Fest and and if you wanted a gig, I had friends that would just put a gig on in a hall, and it'd be like them and some other bands. So there was a really healthy, a really healthy way to see gigs and play music as a kid there that, that you wouldn't get. Of course, it was all over 18s. So there was, also the Gladstone Hotel was just a venue where bands would periodically tour. Like I saw Custard there particularly, what are they called? Do you know Rolo, that guy from?
Yeah.
He's an unusual chap. But like that band used to always play the Blowhard. They were always coming up and doing gigs, and Dream Killers, Mark of Cain, I think played. Like there was like a lot of bands used to tour and play in Toowoomba. It was a viable proposition.
That sounds like a very healthy kind of music scene.
Yeah, it was. And starting a band at 17, 18, we got to just play original music. We got to do a lot of gigs in front of in front of people who were there to listen to gigs. I guess it was that kind of Reality Bites era by then too, when I was doing that, where it was cool to go to gigs and it was cool to mosh, and you could still stage dive and, get hit in the head by a dock.
Well, what did make you want to become a musician?
Seeing Angus Young there's that live at the Apollo. They played it on Rage one night when I was about 13, and just seeing him when he does his complete solo bit, have an audience just go "Wah!" while he goes diddly 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 diddly. That was like, it was as simple as that. From that moment on, that's what I wanted to do.
Wow. Did you ever have like a plan for a real job?
No, because I used to I always said, if you have a backup, you will... No, what was it? If you have a fallback, you'll fall back. That was my saying when I was a kid. I also said I was going to kill myself by age 30 if I wasn't a rock star. I renegotiated that contract. I actually signed a contract with the devil too when I was about 13 or 14, to make me the world's greatest guitar player after seeing Steve Vai in Crossroads, even though he lost to Ralph Macchio. Crossroads?
I've not seen the movie.
But it's like the Karate Kid. It's basically the Karate Kid transposed onto guitar.
Yeah.
And so you have to understand that this is like pre-grunge, so it's all of the cock rock histrionics and the competitive guitar playing and stuff like that. So, and playing just as fast as you can, because that's all I wanted to do for like my whole adolescence. And I saw that, and I saw Steve Vai playing in that, and he plays the devil's guitarist at the end, that Ralph Macchio, as Karate Kid guitarist, has to beat him. And anyway, Ralph Macchio wins, but it was Vai I wanted to be. He was the devil's guitarist. So I'd been... my parents are atheists, but I'd been sort of flirting with Christianity, going to the Interschool Christian Fellowship, because they gave out free pancakes every Tuesday. And so they'd introduced me to the idea of like all of that already. So it was like I hadn't really thought about Satan before the Christians told me about him. And also they played all my favourite bands at the time on a video and said these are all satanic bands like Iron Maiden and AC/DC. So, what do they call them? Anti-Christ, Devil's Child, they reckon AC/DC stood for, and KISS, Knights in Satan's Service. But anyway, so I drew up a contract that said I want to be a famous, really amazing rock guitarist, and then I cut my finger and signed it in my own blood and then burned the contract. I don't know where I got the idea that you have to burn the contract from, because that usually makes a contract null, doesn't it? I don't know.
Well, I imagine if it's an infernal contract, that's like sending it down the pneumatic tube to hell.
Yeah.
Like the devil receives it, it emerges from flame, and that's how he gets it.
Yeah, that really makes sense. Yeah. Well, so that's what I did, and it didn't end up, of course, fucking devil. I should have learned from the Crossroads movie. He never makes good on his bargains, you know.
But I mean, he did it in the evil genie way, because you are an incredible rock guitarist, but you just ended up playing pop music.
Yeah, well, yeah, I ended up playing pop music, but I also ended up not really being, like, the deal was for me to be a rock star, and that didn't come true. Like, that was actually, I actually failed at that and experienced what it is to fail and give up and lose at your dream. Like, honestly, without any exaggeration, like, to absolutely watch what I dreamed about for my whole, since I was 13 to 30. I don't feel sorry for myself, don't get me wrong, but the point that I realized, this is not going to happen for me. Like, I'm too old, and I'm not going to be a rock star. And this was before Kate's career had taken off, and it was when Kate and I were courting, and I was playing in her band and stuff, but it was before anything big happened for her, and it was dawning on me. I'm 30, well, I was late 20s, 30, because 30 was the big. I don't think that's as important anymore. I'm not sure, but 30 was the big deadline that I'd set. And also, it's like, but 27, you're supposed to have already been famous and died of an overdose, you know. And so it was like, well, I'm 3 years past that, you know, and that feeling was just, I know it's just the worst feeling in the world. Like, I had a religious fervor about, and a faith that it was really going to happen, you know. I really believed it. I was going to be the front man / guitarist in a rock band that was going to be, you know, like all my heroes, and it didn't happen. I ended up being the side man and a guitarist for a solo act. It's very different, and it took a lot of adjusting to, you know.
Well, because there aren't any. The mythology that you're fed is not you can become that side man. It is that you're just the lead guy. You're the Freddie Mercury or the Jimmy Page. Like,
I wanted to be Jimmy Page. Yeah,
and even he wasn't a side man. He was like he and Plant were kind of equals in that way. And that's I have a big problem with the perpetration of that kind of mythology, because there's a whole other world that is totally fulfilling in the arts that is not being the main person.
Oh, absolutely. And I couldn't be more fulfilled now, but it didn't, that satisfaction didn't happen overnight. It took a long time. Actually, probably just took aging, really. Like, I'm not the cocksure young man that I once was like 20 years ago, but I'm interested in that mythology, that the idea of, you know, the romantic notion, and I actually kind of think it's pretty cool, because I know what it's like to believe it, to really believe it. And, you know, when I was growing up and trying to find bands to play in and play with other musos, that was actually bad. It led me into playing with some people who were not great, but they shared in common with me just the simple binary. Yes, we can do it. We can become rock stars.
Right.
And that was really rare, because even like my favourite band that I started, which is the one that I guess, like, going back, I would have loved it to, you know, the first band called More, which we started in like 89 or something.
More M-O-R-E or M-A-W?
M-O-R-E.
Because that would have been more cool. Satanic.
Yeah, but we weren't that. We were kind of... Oh no, we were a little. We were rock, but we were like, we modelled ourselves, I guess, on Faith No More, you know, that kind of thing. yeah, those guys were like, they were two people who were just like, my friend, who's still my friend today, Phil, who was the other guy we started the band, and it was just like, Phil, we'll be rock stars, we can do it. And he was just like, yeah, Keir, it's a great idea. Look, it's really good. Let's just see how it goes. Let's, And I used to get so frustrated how sensible he was, and it was just like, no, Phil, you don't get it. We've got to quit everything and go on the dole and like just tour and like, that's all I want. Like, and then, finally I met this other guy. Not finally, the next band that I was in that was serious was just by meeting this guy I went to school with, another guy who believed it too. He was the first person who'd said to me, of all the musos I knew, yeah, you can do it. We can do it. We'll do it. We'll conquer the world. And I was like, yeah. And like another zealot,
This guy gets it.
Yeah, totally. And that was, and that ended up ending in tears. That band, like that was bad. That guy, oh my God, that guy's like a complete sort of phenomenon.
Did Phil in Moore, did he have a fallback plan that he fell back on?
Yeah, well, he just very studiously. Phil was always like more mature than me, and he very studiously went through, completed a media arts degree, when became a cameraman for the local news. His actual real dream, I think, is to be a director. Probably it still is, and he's still, and so now he works in London. He's a freelance television and film editor, and he does like lots of comedy shit, like the Charlie Brooker stuff, and like
wow.
he does all like he works with a lot of amazing like top level British comedians, and he edits in the comedy realm, and so he's like but he's still like one of the smartest people I ever knew, which is probably why he was mature enough to say, kid, that's a good idea. Like, let's see how it goes,
And what happened to the guy in the second band who was a believer?
So first, we were together that band was together for 4 years, and
what were you called?
Complicated Game, we were called, yeah. And after a gig it culminated in a gig where he got glassed after taunting a member of the audience and pushing him off his chair. And this guy was really, really drunk. Shane, his name is. Shane was really, really, really drunk, and like took half his clothes off. It was a Sheraton black tie party, and he was like, dancing on the floor and scaring people off the dance floor. And then he got up on the table and started like wiggling his ass and like fell over and used this guy to block his fall. The guy fell off his chair. The guy's glasses broke. The guy's shaking his fist at Shane. We're all just playing on and trying to get through it. And then finally they cut the power to the stage, and like the head of security like grabs me by the shoulder and goes, "This has got to stop, mate. This guy's a danger to himself and to everyone else. I mean, look." And he pointed over, and Shane's lying on the floor, like just, with the mic in his mouth going, "Brown eyed girl, play Brown eyed girl." Like, and he's all flushed red with alcohol, no shirt, no shoes. Like, and so anyway, we had to pack up in front of like 100 really angry looking people who we'd ruined their party.
How did you get booked at the Sheraton?
That's a long story. Well, Shane used to do Shane, to make money, was a cocktail piano guy who used to,
okay.
And he'd gotten in trouble there, and they sacked him, but he'd booked us to play the Christmas party, and they forgot that they'd booked him. So they forgot he'd booked, and we turned up, and the entertainment manager, you could just see her face like looked shocked as we turned up, because he would get drunk at the gig, and also like there was one time when, so I think the final straw was when I requested that he play that Monty Python song, "Isn't it awfully nice to have a penis?" So he played that, and they used that as an excuse to get rid of him. Anyway, we're packing up in front of all these people, and Shane he's down out somewhere, and someone runs in and says, "Are you the guitarist?" And I go, "Yeah." And they say, "Well, somebody's assaulted the singer. You better go and see him." And so I said, where is he? And they said, just go down, follow the blood. And I went, what? And and it did not look like an assault, like just a normal punch in the head. There was like a stream of blood running out and then down the escalator and out into the car park. Big dollops of blood. And he's lying in the car, he's sitting in the car park rather, sobbing with both his hands over his face and just blood coming out from between his fingers. And it turned out that guy had like waited and then glassed him, the guy whose glasses he right under his eye. So just, a centimetre higher and it would have blinded him. So anyway, that guy went to jail for a year and I think Shane got a payout for improper from the Sheraton for he was in a court case with them for serving him alcohol, I think. Or something. I don't know the details because that was it. I was out of the band. No more band.
Did he have a scar?
Did he have a scar? Yeah, he had a scar under his eye. And then he went on, reinvented himself as Shane Bowden, and having never done art in his life, got shortlisted for the Archibald, and then is now like an artist, a commercial artist, but I've not spoken to the guy ever since. So he's still a true believer in something.
Wow. So you'd moved to Brisbane by then?
Yeah, that was all in Brisbane in the 90s.
Did everyone pretty much eventually move from Toowoomba to Brisbane who was in a band?
No, so like some of them stay there. I went back and there's some guys like, do you know the band Misery?
No.
Right. There were these two brothers who were just awesome. Like Anthony Dwyer is a drummer and he plays in this. They're a full-on metal band, Misery. They're well respected in metal circles. And I think I'm pretty sure he moved to Brisbane, but his brother Steve Dwyer, who was like one of my favourite guitarists, who was my age, he still lives there and plays. And yeah, awesome dude, just a music lover. Like looks like he hasn't aged to me, but yeah.
What's the timeline between when Complicated Game and when did Transport start?
So after Complicated Game, I went, screw this. I give up music in a grand gesture. And then that lasted for about 3 months. And I auditioned for the Conservatorium as a composer to get it. And I didn't get in. And so I got in on guitar to re-audition after I was already in there. And I didn't get in the second time either. So I ended up sticking with the guitar degree. And about a year into the degree, or maybe a little earlier, I started jamming with the guys in Transport. And so Transport was a con band.
Did you learn a lot about guitar that you didn't know from the con?
Yeah, absolutely heaps. I reconstructed my whole guitar playing technique from being there. And, because I learned all the theory and the notes and how to read music properly and lots more control and just lots more, not being afraid of different keys and all that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, how were you playing before? Like what guitarist would you say you kind of played like before the con?
James Hetfield from Metallica mixed with Pete Townsend from The Who.
Okay.
Yeah, so sort of like the difference between really tight, spiky, he was my idol for that, or Scott Ian from Anthrax, like the really tight cuff downstrokes. And then Pete Townsend, big sweeping open chords and stuff like that. Because once I got the lead guitar thing out of my system, which happened after basically grunge came along, even though I wasn't into grunge, it was too messy, but that Faith No More stream and everything, there was a real early 90s, there was a philosophy against big guitar solos. It was kind of like a reaction to that, and even though I'd grown up wanting to do that, that just kind of like fell by the wayside and was really uncool. So I didn't do any of that stuff. I just love rhythm guitarists, and I realised that it was Malcolm Young, not Angus Young, that I loved, and
right.
Pete Townsend, and and Jim Martin from Faith No More, and just like just great rhythm guitarists because yeah. So that was and before the con, and then a con like meant that it was jazz guitar, so I had to like solo and stuff like that, and so I kind of revived that stuff, but. I'm still not great at soloing and stuff like that. During I think the key moment when I should have been focusing on that, I was doing rhythmic stuff.
But you're really good at like playing the lead bits and alternating really quickly between chord stuff and lead bits, and while you're singing as well. It seems.
there's a micro and a macro thing going on there. That the con makes you basically, it made me have to deconstruct the technique and work out, actually intellectually what was going on, which I'd never done before. And there was a huge cost in that for a couple of years before that all got integrated, because once you pull something apart, it's really hard to put it back together again. But I realised at the time that, when you say that lead stuff, I mean, that's just a jazz guitar technique. Like people, and the way I do it is really quite primitive compared to proper jazz guitarists. But it's really just going, okay, well, this is a big Pete Townsend windmill is a really macro thing, and you're using you'll be playing from your shoulder, like with, and then a lead thing is like, you're either playing from your wrist or sometimes even your thumb. And so it's just being, once you are aware that that's a thing, then it just helps you focus. Just being aware of something happening can help sometimes,
In the bands before Transport, were you singing in them as well?
Yeah, not in Complicated Games, Shane was the singer, but in More I was the singer, and in Transport I was the singer. Yeah, but the singing was sort of by default, and it was always I had a massive ego and I wanted to be the center of attention, but also it was in both Transport and More, it was more like I couldn't find anyone, or we couldn't as a band that could do the songs that I guess I was writing the lyrics and stuff, so and the vocals, so but I would have loved to have, I know who the singer I would have loved to have, but now he's 25 and Transport are over, but if I'd met that guy, he'd be the singer.
Did most of the music for Transport songs, did they come out of jams?
We used to early on, and then I got serious about being a quotation mark songwriter. Like I really took that seriously later on. I turned into an egomaniac and a control freak, and sorry to my friends for that. I think they've forgiven me, but early on, what we'd do is we'd press record play on the tape recorder, and we'd jam for like 2 hours, and I'd take it home, sift through it, and turn them into songs. And I still think the first EP we ever did was the best thing we ever did. It was based on our jams, and it was when we were like in that first flush of love of playing with each other,
And it was kind of it reminded me a bit of like early Regurgitator, in that there was a bit of funkiness to the Scott's bass playing, and there was a lot of funny sort of social commentary and cultural commentary to it. Yeah. Were Gurge an influence?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, one of the pivotal gigs I ever saw was Gurge supporting Primus, which is like, I think, a famous gig among Gurge fans, and that was like, that's the band I want to be, that's who I want to be, Yeah, so they were definitely an influence. And it was when funk, like, it's just amazing to think now, like, but funk was just such a part of what the people who were in the scene that I was in played, like as a guitarist in a band. And I think by the time Transport started, I kind of that was over and really daggy, and I don't think we were aware of it. Yeah.
You put on a lot of different voices in singing all the Transport songs. Like even within a song, like there'd be screaming bits, there'd be very melodic bits, there'd be like kind of character kind of things.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever actually heard you sing a serious song on your own.
Yeah, it's because I don't know how to.
I've heard you sing Frankie Walnut songs, which are all funny. I've heard you sing backing on some serious Kate songs. Yeah. But I don't know what you actually sound like on your own.
Neither do I. I don't think there actually is. I don't think I actually. That's why I'm not really a proper singer, I don't think. I've never found a way, and I've tried to. I did solo acoustic stuff for about a year to try and work out how to do that, to try and find out what my voice is. But I honestly, like, I don't know that. I just don't think I can do it. I have to adopt a persona, or I cannot sing. I don't know why that is.
Were Transport, they got pretty popular.
Yeah, it looked like it was going to happen for us at one point. Like we got slammed on Triple J at one. We got one of our first sort of EP got one song that got, spot rotation, and then we got like on the hit list or whatever of another song, Sunday Driver, and it just got slammed. And then in Brisbane, we were, I don't know, like we were playing to sort of 250, 300 people who would pay to come and see us when we did a gig, which is like, you feel an energy of like, oh, whoa, this is like, it really looked like, especially given my mythology and everything, that it really felt like it was going to happen. And we toured around Australia, but we played to no one around Australia. Like I don't think we ever booked more than sort of 10, 15 people that I remember in anything outside of Brisbane. And we'd play Sunday Driver, and people used to come up and think it was a cover. They'd heard it on Triple J, but they didn't connect, which is fair enough. If there's no infrastructure around you to exploit that, why should they know that it's transport? I mean, you hear something on the radio, and it got played a lot. But, so eventually that just kind of, the momentum of that kind of gradually dried up, and the audiences got smaller. Meanwhile, Kate's audience, when I was playing in Kate's band at the same time, and Transport were Kate's backing band for a while, started just exponentially grow, and then the record companies came in, and then it seemed like, a 6-month period where it went from that 200 to like 800 people or something at shows.
How did you first meet Kate?
She was at the con at the same time as me. She was doing operatic voice, but I didn't really meet her. I'd just seen her around, and then that's when I was doing the solo acoustic stuff, and her band were in a Battle of the Bands against me, or Battle of the Bands was a Regatta Hotel Fret Fest or a clapometer thing, and I won against her, and we that's how we sort of got to know each other, and and then we became partners. We became lovers, and then she gradually, sort of like as we were playing, we being a guitarist and she was a vocalist, we started playing together and doing a little bit of stuff together.
But at the very start, like at Fret Fest, you must have been playing very different kinds of music. Was she still into very much the opera stuff?
Oh, not at all. No. In fact, I think the opera thing for her at that point was a bit of a chore. She knew she could do it, and she enjoyed it as any musical person enjoys doing a different genre. But she did it out because she's a very conscientious scholar, and I think that she got into the con on a scholarship, and was obviously one of the better students. But she wanted to play pop. Like her heroes were folky. Who's the folk woman who owns the label? I should know her name.
Annie DeFranco?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She loved Arnie DeFranco and Christina Olsen, who, is a Woodford stalwart, and Kate was like her world was the Woodford Folk Festival, and her band Elsewhere were like very folky, and that's the music she loved, and Joni Mitchell Blue, that kind of stuff. Yeah, so that was what she was doing, and my stuff was kind of frenetic, Talking Headsy kind of acousticy stuff.
So how did your styles ever kind of get together then? Because that's pretty different sort of stuff.
Well, I still, like every rock guitarist who could, loved the ballad from day one, and so and there was like an interest in Dylan and stuff early on. So, but what it really was a persona shift again. Like for me, the whole, when Kate said to me, "You haven't written me a love song yet," as my partner. And so I wrote her a song called Space I Cannot Touch, which is a folky, a really folky song. And it was the first time that I'd written it for her to sing. Suddenly when I talk about that persona thing in my voice, but also when you start playing, you tap into, it was like this whole area that I hadn't tapped into as a man. Suddenly, as soon as the gender of the singer was going to change, goes like really opened up, and the weird thing was that being from an alternative music background, and I'm furious about authenticity, so that was kind of enlightening in a way, because you go, okay, well, that doesn't feel any less authentic, even though that's, and then I'm like, oh, well, that's a feminine part of me or whatever, but you can't think your way out of what feels authentic and what doesn't,
It must have been pretty freeing, like writing a song from a female perspective. And I guess maybe you didn't feel like you had to be sarcastic and shouty and putting on all these weird voices, because it's for someone else specifically to sing.
Yeah, totally. And also, above and beyond being, sarcastic or cynical or writing those ironic kind of Gurge-like lyrics, I did other stuff that was very like comfortably in the acceptable male. I mean, that stuff is acceptable male stuff. It's interesting discovering this stuff as, like, working with Kate, how when we write stuff and we go, that's not working because a woman can't sing that and sound not like she's being a fucking dick, like, which is like really unusual. But you'll find areas of irony that you can come. Like, there's a song recently we wrote about how tastes have changed. It's like, anyway, the narrator is like this knowing kind of, like, what a very, you would hear in a lot of songs, like, say, Father John Misty or stuff like that. That's like this kind of perspective that's kind of wry and like observational. And as soon as Kate sang it, it sounded like she was being arrogant. And now this is not like, we're not thinking, this is not political or anything when I say that a woman singing that sound. No, it's just, what I'm saying is that we're just evaluating it as to whether or not we want to put it on a record. And we're listening to the song and just going, why is that not working? And we toy with it for a day, 2 days. We put it aside, come back, and you go, that's not working, because for whatever reason, maybe it's not just gender, maybe it's Kate's voice, but whatever reason, when it feels like that when a woman sings this wry observational song, she sounds arrogant. When a man sings it, he sounds knowing. And I don't know, that's probably because of our own preconceptions, ingrained sexism or whatever, but
I think there is a thing, and I think it is beyond a gendered thing as well. I think it's just down to how some people sound when they sing.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
I find sometimes I write songs that I don't mean to be sarcastic and mean, but they sound snarky when I sing them out loud, because I'm a bit nasally and stuff. It's I don't mean it like that. I mean it more slacker.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, that's really, David Byrne, did you see that last tour?
No, I didn't, yeah.
Oh, well, he did. He's got a song called Everybody's Coming to My House, and he said that, he'd written it as an anxious person, like it's like it is, and it's sort of a sarcastic, everyone's coming to my house, it's going to be a great time. And then he heard this Detroit kids school choir do it or something, and they were like, he said they just did it. They made sense of the song so much better than I ever could have. Like, they got that and now he tries and performs it like it's a celebration rather than a dread about everybody coming over. And that context is really interesting. And you're right, it could just be Kate's voice in that particular context. But I answered you. You asked if that had led to an expansion in my world, and I answered you with a contraction. But it actually was immensely freeing.
When you first met Kate, did you find your senses of humour were very similar?
Yeah, totally. In fact, one of the things that I think has held us in good stead as a partnership, just as man and wife, as wife and man rather, has been we are really culturally compatible. Like, we have pretty much the same political, cultural, not musical, definitely tastes, but everything else, like comedy, drama. Like, we'll both put on something and go 5 minutes to just look at each other and go, nah. And we'll both agree. There's very little. Kate likes Britain's most embarrassing bodies, though. I don't like that, but like that, there's got to be some exceptions. But our comedic tastes are very similar. And in fact, writing, when you wouldn't, I don't think, be able to tell in a lot of the songs that we've written together that are comedic. Who wrote which gag,
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. I was trying to do that recently, but it's kind of hard because I've heard your sense of humour on its own in the Frankie Walnut stuff, but I've not heard, or I'm not aware of, like, if I've heard Kate's funny stuff on her own. Like all I know is the stuff you've come up with together. So it is very hard to sort of piece together whose line is from who. And there are some amazing, because the funny songs have been, I think, what has really set Kate's music apart through most of her career. And there's some incredible lines like, "Are you fucking fuck?" is is one of my favorite ever lines in a song. Like it's because there's also musical jokes in it. It's not just lyrical.
Yeah.
And I love that kind of shit.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah.
And so did you find you were writing funny songs together from the start?
Yeah. Well, we, again, like, it's really funny how Kate is perceived in the world. I know she's disliked by a lot of people, but not personally. But definitely people dislike her music. But the thing is that why I say that is because, the big influences in the start were all folk, and Christina Olsen in particular. Like, Kate and I went to a Christina Olsen workshop at Woodford, and that formed like a huge template of what we've done ever since. Like, it still plays. Her advice in that workshop still is a central sort of philosophy in what we do.
What did you learn there?
Well, formulaically, what we learned, which we don't do all the time anymore, but like I think is great advice. A couple of things she said was, to do with humour. She said, like, audiences like to sit there for an hour or longer and watch a show, will start to, like, they'll get bored, or their minds want to, if you want to get them to breathe, the best way to get people to intake oxygen is to make them laugh. And so even if it's a funny story between the songs, or if it's a funny song, so you're getting oxygen to their brain so often, and you're also making them emotionally vulnerable because they're laughing. When you laugh, you let your guard down. So, like, it's a really powerful thing to do a comedy song and then follow it with one of your ballads, because one, they're going to be more, then a ballad after ballad after ballad is going to make you tired or whatever. But if you've just been laughing, you've had a shot of oxygen and a shot of, like, dopamine or whatever gets released, and then someone plays a sad song, you're in a vulnerable state emotionally, so it's more likely that you'll take it on board, and you're awake more because you've been laughing. And so that was one of the pieces of advice she gave. The other was, like, do 2 songs before you say a word to the audience. And which I think is really interesting, because it's like, it's letting them know, it's giving, and really, like, I guess it's giving them your intention of what you're going to do. It's like, I'm here to play songs for you, so this is what I'm going to do. Because if you get up and talk for a while, they might think you're going to be mostly talking to them, or they might just be like, what's this person doing? They're getting shot. You can fit, like, there's like the sword of Damocles. It's like, why haven't they started playing a song? Anyway, that was good advice, and she did a lot of, like, her songwriting workshops, like, unbelievable.
Does she still do them at Woodford?
I have no idea. Like, I just, it was 1 year that she was playing and she did it. And, but her in general, the way that she plays, and she has like, one, the folky thing, we always love having songs that are stories, which is a Christina Olsen, like, but that's in the folk tradition, of course. She does funny songs. She tells, Kate talks. I think one of the things that she does is talk quite a bit between songs, and I think that I've always loved that, and so has Kate. Like Billy Bragg, sometimes you'll go and you'll go, wow, I think at a Billy Bragg concert 50% might have been talking, but I don't care. It's like, and it's that approach is very different to the really cool, I guess the cool approach of, like, doing 2 songs, saying a tiny little bit, or saying nothing, which I'm fine with too. And I love some people that do that. Like David Byrne hardly spoke. Like, the show was self-evident. He did say a couple of things. Like, I think there were probably 2 or 3 moments during a 2.5 hour show where he spoke at like longer than just da 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 da, and then the next song, because he is presenting this seamless thing. AC/DC, I don't think they said anything except, like, they might have said, "You feeling good" at one point, but that's fine too. Like, because it totally, like, it makes sense that what you're doing is you're constructing it like a stage show is just like any other piece of theatre, which also I know is probably not a popular thing to say, that it is theatre, but it is theatre. I don't even care if Nick Cave is theatre. Who's someone else who's really authentic? I say authentic, quote unquote, but like Neil Young, who I like love him, but like I'm just saying that's the theatre is created simply by putting a stage in a place with lights. Forget the lights; doesn't even have to be lights. Putting a person on a stage in front of a room, it could be in a lounge room anyway. It's still theatre.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if it's like a really aloof artist,
Yeah,
their aloofness is still part of a performance.
it has to be. The moment that you've walked in stage, the setting it dictates that. There's no negotiation there. It's not like Although I do believe that some people are more immersed in their more completely immersed in what they're doing, perhaps. Although that immersion is not the right
no,
word.
I think I know what you mean. I think a lot of like small local bands kind of fall down on stage presence in that way, even if no matter how amazing they are when they're playing a song. One thing that I don't want to say it bugs me because it shouldn't be the be all and end all of a live gig, but I really appreciate when people do have good between song banter, or that they just don't stuff around in silence on stage.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. Unless they're doing it deliberately.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Like I just think that it's a simple failure to recognise that.
There's no pause button on a show when you stop playing a song. People are still watching you. People are still listening. And if you're not still doing something compelling, that breaks the part of the show.
Yeah, and I do think that's because of romantic ideology. Is that they're kind of thinking that it's not acknowledging that that everything. Yeah, like you say, from the moment that you start till the end is a self-contained piece of performance. It's as important as you picking the right verse and the right chorus in a song, which obviously you value your songwriting. If you're completely like if you're a subscriber completely to romantic ideology and you believe in 100%, well, you still need to acknowledge that it's a communication on some level, and that no matter what you do, you will be communicating something. And if you don't want to communicate something, then never stand on the stage. It's fine. Stay in the audience or, stay at home. And I don't mean it, again, like in a bad way, but I do know that I wasn't aware of those things for a long time. It's stuff that I had to learn and be taught. And I think it's really valuable. Like, and you do see it with inexperienced bands. And then there are some inexperienced bands who just innately come completely formed as amazing performers, and it's just such an amazing thing to witness. Yeah. Oh my God.
So when Transport became Kate's backing band, how did you go from being your own self-contained unit with you as the front person to all of you backing Kate?
What was weird was I had forgotten how to I didn't know where to put my face when I wasn't singing, and that was really weird. That took me actually years to get over. I don't know why, because, I'd always wanted to be a guitarist, et cetera. But yeah, I didn't know what to do with my face. And so I arrived at, I'll look at first I tried looking at the back of the room, like they say in public speaking. And then one of the things I used to do was like pretend I was singing the lyrics in my head. And that seemed to help, but it was actually really awkward for a long time.
What did you eventually land on?
Just don't think about it. Just concentrate on what you're doing. But I mean, obviously, yeah, you go through moments when you're more submerged in what you're doing. But I used to worry that, like, I'd go, like someone would go, oh, you were staring at your feet the whole gig, like someone helpfully, probably one of my friends, or and I used to take that on to heart and go, yeah, that's really bad. I shouldn't stare at my feet. And now I just go, look, yeah. And for quite a while now, I've just gone, I don't care, I don't care where I put my face. It's not important. No one's looking at me anyway. But as somebody who's always wanted to be the center of attention when you're young, that's a hard thing to adapt to.
I think even when I'm singing, I have to remind myself to look up. Because that's another thing I like when I'm seeing a gig is I like to see people's eyes.
Yeah.
But I do sometimes I don't have a choice because I have to watch what I'm doing on a guitar.
Yeah.
But if it's something easy, just like open chords, then I've got like a pin cushion that's like rotating all around my brain saying, look up, look up,
Yeah.
look up, look up.
Yeah. But is that good? I don't know.
It's just one of the things I guess I like seeing as an audience member.
Yeah, so you want
I
to
assume
present
that
that.
everyone else likes seeing
Yeah.
it, which may not necessarily be true. Maybe they think it's more important I watch what I'm doing with my fingers.
I don't know. Yeah, it's impossible to know, and that's the weird thing is it's impossible to know what anybody thinks about you. Really, like Ben Folds said that. We toured with Ben Folds a lot, and he was a kind of again like a later. It was later on, but in Kate's career, but was a kind of
A mentor.
Yeah. He gave us lots of interesting advice and wisdom and knowledge, and yeah, but one of the big things was like, you don't know what people like about your own music. Like, you don't know what they hate about your music, or you don't know what they wish that you would change. And you can't do market research. It's not like that. And so you might think, oh, everybody loves how we do this, and it's just gonna drive you nuts and also make your music suck if you worry about that stuff, even though you want it to reach a wide audience as possible, as wide of an audience as possible. Sorry, we do. I can't speak for anyone else. Some people might be happy not doing that, but I know that Kate and I both share ambition, always have. So that, but you can't. Paradoxically, you can't really second guess it, and you can hear it when people do, and it sounds really smelly.
Yeah. I've started to notice when television shows do that.
Oh, I can't handle. Yeah.
As they get into later seasons, you can see the writing starts to pander towards what fan reaction has been. Yeah.
A friend of mine says about theory. A friend of mine says you can tell that they know what they are now.
Yeah.
Which is like,
and it breaks the whole, because television is a medium that I don't know how to make that.
Yeah.
And so when it becomes that obvious that I can tell that they're reacting to the audience, it's really bad.
I know. It must be hard to sustain that, but
I'm sure.
I felt that happen with Ricky Gervais. Did you think that that at some? You don't think so?
Oh no, I hadn't thought of it. I haven't really seen what he's done.
Are you
for
a
a
fan?
while.
See, I was a massive Gervais fan.
I was on board for
Office.
Office extras and even into Life's Too Short.
I loved Life's Too Short. It got panned, but I loved it.
That was pretty good. I didn't see the other one. Has he done one or two series since then?
He did that one where he plays a mentally challenged dude.
Yeah.
And that is just like, I can't. It's just so manipulative and so like cue the sad piano music in front of the old bloke sitting lonely in his chair, and like really. That's where you just. But I also felt like in Extras kind of started like the characters of him and Steve Merchant, being sitting behind a desk as powerful men. I mean, I just felt that was a weird because his comic persona before that had been somebody that like was not afraid to look completely like hideous.
Yeah.
And then suddenly he's wearing a V-neck shirt and, a flattering black V-neck T-shirt and sitting behind a desk being a powerful TV producer. I mean, sorry, that's not Extras, that's Life's Too Short.
Right,
yeah. No, in Extras he was, of course, a self-deprecating dude, and that was amazing. Like that episode where he's the guy, where he has to play the gay guy in the play, the Ian McKellen one.
Oh yeah,
and the and all these tough, unreconstructed men come, and he doesn't want. Yeah. Oh my god, that is so good. Oh man,
he's good at letting you see without it being like too obvious, like exactly what cogs are moving in the character's brain, and the different ways he's being torn between two objectives, I guess. Yeah, he's good at that.
And just the mining those areas of self, like vanity and and humiliation and all that, which are I love that, probably because it was a very 90s thing, I guess, too, like self-deprecation and being a neurosis being cool.
Yeah.
Like neurosis is not cool anymore. It took me a long time to realize that. Yeah.
When you and Transport started playing with Kate, did she already have a bit of a following from elsewhere?
There were people who liked Elsewhere, and there were also like from Woodford, Elsewhere playing at Woodford, and then doing the Women in Voice shows.
Yeah.
So she got a lot of fans from that.
I think the first time I saw Kate was at a Broad show, the ones that Deborah Conway put on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was like Mia Dyson and Ella Hooper were there that year. Yeah. So you're playing to good crowds kind of from the get-go with Kate?
Oh, no. No, me and Kate were doing we were supplementing our income by doing covers and, we did the odd Christmas gig, and she was still in this band called the daggest thing in the world, the Festive Four, who used to do 4-part harmony, like opera carols and stuff. And we did lots of early gigs where it wasn't a lot of people. I mean, it was more people, I guess, maybe than some people get early on, but maybe audiences of 50, more in Brisbane always, but outside of that, smaller audiences and venues that we were not suited to. But one thing I think that we had as an advantage was that she could do that kind of, I guess there was an element of cabaret in what she did, and so it could get us into some sort of venues that normally you wouldn't get into.
Like in festival kind of things.
Well, certainly it suited festivals a lot because we were always mindful of making an entertaining show, and so I think that bodes well for any festival thing, because you can just watch it cold and not know the act and be entertained for an hour.
Yeah.
Also, her voice is just like on its own a big thing that people just love to listen to do whatever. Like, I don't think they often cared, and people, once they heard that voice, I know, got addicted to it. I've read the fan mail, of course, over the years, but but that was small crowds, but bigger than Transport's outside of Brisbane.
Was that a source of tension at all?
Look, it's certainly inattention. I was and it would spill over. Definitely, like, I had to. Well, the real part was, there was like a night in Sydney. I don't know if I've told you before, but there was a night in Sydney where we played to, I don't know how many people. It was over 500 with Kate and Transport, and then packed up all our gear and went over and did an 11 p.m. show after hers to like nobody, like literally like 4-5 people in a bar who could care less that we were there. And that was like, that was when it was becoming really apparent. It's just like, this is like, so like, this is it. It's not going to happen. And like, Kate's stuff was getting more busy and placing more demands on us, for time and stuff. And it did spill over into like, I did it early on. Oh, and for a while, like, have to battle feelings of resentment and of going like, it did help that I don't know, I don't think I could have obviously been a collaborator working for a solo artist, and I don't think I would have seen it through if we weren't in love. I think we would have. I wouldn't have been able to handle it. My ego wouldn't have been able to handle it. It was really, really brutal from about that time for about I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Like, I mean, when we had the hit. But the thing was that it was something that that calmed down. Just, I think with aging, your priorities as a performer change. Like, I don't have a hunger to be in front of people like I used to. Like, I still really enjoy it, but it's not like it used to be central to my identity. Like,
Is it like when you're young, you can eat like as much chocolate as you want and it doesn't make you fat? And it's like, all I want to do is eat chocolate. But then when you get older, you know that chocolate is a sometimes food.
Yeah.
And And sometimes it's nice to go out and you know, and be Frankie and be the center of attention.
Yeah, that's great.
But it's not, you can't live off that.
No. And also, it would drive me nuts if I had to do Frankie all the time. It's like, it's really, really fun, and I love being center of attention. I love all that stuff. And it does kind of get it out of my system. But the one period where I was doing it, trying to do it seriously, trying to do comedy seriously, was like it's just like it starts to mess with your head. And I don't think it's actually good for me mentally to be the person who's the center of attention too much. Even though I love it, again, it's like, it's good when it's just like with the chocolate, a small enough portion to remain healthy and balanced, you know.
So you did 2 EPs with Kate independently, and then you got signed to Sony. Is that right?
Oh, we did one EP independently, which was her master's postgrad at QT.
Telegram?
Telegram was recorded as that. And that had the Space I Cannot Touch on it, which got slammed by Triple J, which led to... and at this point, Kate had got a manager, Leanne D'Souza, who was like... Kate had hassled Leanne for a long time to be her manager, because Leanne taught me at the con as well. She lectured in music industry studies, which was the most illuminating and disheartening thing I ever learned. It's like, oh my God, is this how hard it really is? Yes, it is. And then she was a manager by that time. So we started having infrastructure around what we were doing. And Leanne had a lot of experience in in helping bands like go from having potential to actually pulling in people consistently, mailing lists, like really organised, really good at getting bands up, climbing up the rungs of the ladder, and being organised. Like there's, so by that stage we were playing to, like, say the Zoo packed out, so that, and then like maybe half that in the other capital cities, and then with the Triple J play that was happening, and there was a buzz around it. So then there was like one gig at the Zoo where it was like EMI and Sony and maybe Warner were there, and then that led to signing with Sony, and we'd already recorded, I think, the next EP, but Sony licensed it for release, and then we did the first album with Sony, which went gold.
I remember in the couple of years before the first album came out, it seemed like Kate was playing just about every week. Like it was like her and like Alice in Wonderland.
Oh, really?
I always remember her name, like being always DJing everywhere. But I remember Kate, just from reading Street Press alone, like she seemed to be like one of the hardest working people in Brisbane music.
Yeah, right. So was that around Brisbane?
Brisbane.
Yeah,
just Brisbane.
Yeah, right.
Like from memory. Maybe it was a little bit earlier than the album, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, I know that touring was always like, touring's always, the live stuff has always been like a massive, and in fact, we were lucky that that's been the way, because, when the radio blackout came, the great radio blackout of 2010 or whatever, when Nova didn't play and Triple J wouldn't play us, Kate, that was, the live stuff just kept going, and we were still selling out shows. So it was like, that seems to have been the central spine of what we do, and still is.
So the first album, Little Eve, where'd you record that?
At Black Box Studios with Magoo.
How'd you find Magoo?
Well, I mean, Regurgitator. But, I can't remember exactly how. There was a list, like record labels do, there was a list of producers, I think. And we went with Magoo just because he seemed realistic, and, I loved the Gurge stuff, and Kate really liked Gurge. We worked with him. Also, he seemed to reflect what we wanted to do with the music. Like, he was like, because we, at that point, it's funny because that we sort of ended up being a commercial pop thing, because we, in our minds at that point, we were not that at all. Like, Kate's first single off Little Eve is a Transport song, that got adapted for Kate. And
was that Words?
Yeah. And then that album is, when I listen to it now, I go, oh wow, that really is a poppy album. But it's like all still live instruments and everything. But I guess that's what pop was then. I can't really remember.
I think pop, it just has there's a lot more just effects and things on it. It's not as clean these days. I
Yeah.
think, alternative pop isn't anyway.
Yeah, I don't see. I'm out of touch with a lot of that stuff now. I really don't know. Like I hear stuff that I like, but it doesn't sound like. I wouldn't be able to tell you if it was off, say, Triple J or Nova. But it's probably not the best way to categorize music. Whether there, but like that's the way. I know that's the way that as aspiring musicians, that's the way that you. I don't know if they still do that, but certainly in our era, you were like, well, we're either going to be on Nova or Triple J. There's no, Fox Nova or Triple J is if you don't get Triple J, you don't get anything. And so we of course, the first one we thought, yeah, Magoo's, they've played. They played the absolute bejesus out of Space They Cannot Touch off Telegram, and so we thought, yeah, we thought this was indie pop. We were, I don't think we were overthinking it. We were just like, yep. But you do, I mean, I don't care what anyone says. Any band you've heard of in Australia has been through that process when it comes to making production decisions on a recording.
What do you mean? Made what?
They've thought about the destination of their album.
Okay, right,
They've thought about, is this album, maybe they don't anymore, but definitely in that era. Like maybe now you just go, this is our album. I don't think so. I'm not. Or maybe you do, but certainly I know that there's no producer that's just not mindful of like what the especially when you're with a label and the label are like, okay, this needs to be played, and the A&R comes in and listens. I mean, Sony stayed out of it. But we were like to Magoo, we'd love this to be played on the radio, and we'd love it to be played on Triple J, because Triple J was the radio station we listened to, and like that's what we admired, and we thought that we were that kind of band. Our experience of playing was at folk festivals and in sticky carpet kind of stuff. But also, I guess we had a blind spot. We didn't realise we were doing what they call cutlery gigs,
Cutlery gigs?
Cutlery gigs where people eat dinner and watch your show.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
so we were doing a lot of those. I guess we didn't see ourselves as a cutlery gig band. But,
So Triple J didn't pick up the album?
No, they... So we've got emails exchanges with Kingsmill going back a while, but like at that point it was like, because he'd totally slammed that one. Telegram, or at least Space I Cannot Touch, rather. And then he said he wanted to, I believe he wanted to see what the marketing was around it, because I think he was aware that, at the point, that was when Triple J were sort of really pitting themselves as the enemy of the average, I think that was their saying at the time, and they were like, this is an alternative to the other stations. You want to make sure that I think that we weren't. I know he had a great deal of mistrust for Sony, and I read in an interview with him referring to Kate where he said that that she was he said he had misgivings when she was signed to Sony and other. So anyway, that she would just become part of a stable of things being a certain presented in a certain way, and he was completely right. The artwork on Little Eve and the way that Sony marketed that stuff was like, this is like the next Gwen Stefani kind of, like, this is pop, this is like total pure pop, and so there was that element. But it's funny how the artwork informs the production on something. Like if you look at that picture while you listen to, Sony have a rule that for their artists, they have to stare down the barrel of the camera directly at the camera. And if you don't have that, a photo of you looking into the camera, you don't have an album cover. And so on top of that, there was all these debates around the album artwork. I remember loathing the album artwork, and I loathed the person who did the PR campaign at Sony, and one of the most shocking things, and I'm not complaining about Sony either. Again, like it's matter of fact to me now. I'm really glad the way things have panned out, and it all happened because all of this happened. And then after saying that caveat, I can't remember what I was going to say.
The person who did the art.
Yeah, well, it was the person who did the art, the person who did the PR, and one of the most illuminating things after years of wanting to be signed to a major label was actually getting to see what it's like at Sony. I can't speak for any other label because it's the only one I've had dealings with, but that it really was a just a business like any other business, even at 30 years of age, that was really shocking to me. Even though I've read all about behind the scenes at the music industry, when you go into a place and people are, like just getting the feeling that this, say the person that worked on the PR, that she wouldn't care. Like she would have no preference whether she was doing a Deicide album or like the most poppy thing in the world. Because probably if you asked her, she'd be like, if you said, what kind of music do you listen to? She's probably the kind of person who just says, oh, I don't really listen to music. And it's like, oh, right. You like all the stuff about music except the actual music. Okay. Well, that was just like unbelievable. Anyway, the whole thing got turned into a commercial looking thing. She worded, if you like Gwen Stefani and I can't remember who the other one was. It was like Madonna or someone. You'll love Kate Miller-Heidke, the quirky new pop princess, on Sony Music. And it's like the things that stayed with us still to this day are quirky. Like quirky has been a through word ever since.
And Kate's always hated that word.
Yeah, she's not a real fan of it. I think she's kind of like had to accept that that's just what they say. But as she gets older, of course, quirky doesn't really suit anymore. So they'll come up with, it'll be eccentric next. But I don't know. Eccentric's better than quirky. Anyway, that was a through word. And so, you can't help but have that inform the music. And the film clips just look to me just so overdone and overpolished. And so, yeah, so that was really interesting. And then, yeah, they didn't play it. So Triple J, of course, didn't touch the thing. They were just like, no way. And Nova gave it a bit of spot rotation, but it was too, like, Words is a weird song, I think. But we got, like, a couple of big things, like we got to perform it at the Arias and stuff. And, again, like, the live show is always separate. Like, it's just chugging away and getting bigger all the time. And then when we realised that it was time to do album 2 and that Triple J weren't playing it, we went, okay, screw it. Let's just make an album that's like, pop. And but it was like pop the way that we kind of, like, it was kind of like there was an element of irony through it, but it was pop still. Like, I'm not disowning that. It was like, so we went down to JB Hi-Fi and we bought Micah's album and Rihanna's album. We'd never listened to this stuff. We bought like 10 albums and we just went home and listened to them and went, oh, that's pop. Okay, cool. And I got a computer and like just started like trying to do drum beats and like all this stuff. So, and that's how we made that Curiouser. Well, that's how it was all written. And then it really like, that was when there was a big hit.
Was there actually a bit of like legitimate spite that went into the creativity of Curiouser? Like, oh, well, we don't fit into this email. Well, fuck you. We'll fit into this.
Yeah, there was that attitude of like, okay, well, we're not going to throw away. Like, for me, it was like, by this stage, I'd taken complete, like, there was no delineation between Kate and me as far as I was concerned. And I felt like, well, I've waited for 15 years to release an album and have a proper budget to record an album. I'm not going to just dribble away, and there was an element of spite. And then again, like with the shifting persona, it's like the same as when I did the music with Kate and adopted a female persona. When I started working on the kind of production arrangements of Curiouser, and it was like the songwriting, everything was just like, it didn't feel from the inside like we were being inauthentic. And it actually exploded a lot of myths I had as an indie performer that about authenticity. About what it did was actually just invigorate me musically. It was just like, wow, we can just like you know, and you pick the parts of what you like. Like, I love that Micah song, like, I can be Pug, I can be Pug.
Grace Kelly.
Yeah, Grace Kelly. And then from that, we were like, well, Grace Kelly sounds kind of like Queen. And so we had like twin guitars and stuff on that album. And you know, it was just a hell of a lot of fun to make. And it was just, I just remember that as being a really vital creative time where not the kind of experience you would expect from people going, we're going to make an album to be played on Nova, because it's not as simple as that. It was like going, yippee, like, you know, I've got all these toys now. I can like program drums. I can do, you know, use loops. I can, it was amazing.
And because you still had your sense of humour, it was like you're having your cake and eating it too. Like Can't Shake It works as an incredibly catchy pop song, but it's also like a deconstruction of a pop song as well, lyrically. Like, it's hilarious.
Yeah, you should have seen the conversation. You know, it's a dance song about not being able to dance.
Exactly.
Let's make a dance song about not being able to dance. So, and about, you know, feeling awkward. You should have seen the conversation between the A&R going, oh, but no, Kate Miller-Heidke, she shakes it. Like, she has to be able to shake it. And we're just going, no, but the whole point of the song is she can't shake it. And she's just going like, no, but no one's going to believe that Kate Miller-Heidke can't shake it. And we're going, what are you talking about? Kate is awkward. And she's like, no, she's not. She's Kate Miller-Heidke. And it was just this amazing conversation and really pushing us to change the lyric to I'm just going to shake it. Which, can you believe? Like, you know.
It would have been a Black Eyed Peas song if you could shake it.
Yeah, and also we knew we could never do that. Like, we can't. If you just listen to the production on it, it's us like kind of being poppy, but it's not convincing pop. Well, I didn't think it was, but I mean, obviously the ballad. You know, the ballad is just a ballad. It's just a song, but yeah.
What was behind Caught in the Crowd? Because that was the big blow up one, right?
No, that was the turntable hit. Like that went platinum in the end, but after like a couple of years.
Oh, Last Day on Earth, sorry.
Yeah, so they made a clip for it, they released it, but Nova didn't pick it up, or any of the stations. They spot rotated it, but didn't play it. Triple J completely out of the picture by now. And then Last Day on Earth got used in an episode of Neighbours when one of the main characters died. And
right.
And then that, so the Nova still weren't playing, no one was playing it, but it became like number one on the iTunes chart. And then in the end, like after, I think it was number one on the iTunes chart for like 3 weeks before they added it to the radio. And then it became a bona fide hit.
What'd that feel like?
Oh, it was like the best feeling in the world. Yeah, it was. I mean, I never knew that I knew I wanted to be a rock star from when I was a kid. I never knew I wanted to write a hit song. Like, I'd never put those two together. It was just like we were living in London at the time, and it was get up every morning, check iTunes, look at the number one, just look at it over the first cup of coffee of the day. It was just the greatest few weeks of my life.
Did it feel odd having the big hit be a slower ballad and not like a quirkier song?
No, I don't think so. That song actually was like, I remember we recorded it in LA, and I remember driving home on the freeway after we mixed it, listening to the mix. It was like 5:30 in the morning. We're working all night, and either me turning to Kate or Kate turning to me, and one of us said to the other, if that's not a hit, I don't know what is. Like, it was the one that we thought was the hit. But you can't release a ballad it has to be the third single. That's one of the record label formulas, or it used to be before Adele. I don't know if it still is,
So what kind of things did you get to do off the back of Curiouser that were like a step up from what you'd been doing before?
Well, yeah, I don't know.
Was that when you started touring America?
No, that came. The touring of America came later. We played like big. We were playing to like 2,000 people, like around Australia when we toured Australia at that point in the peak of Curiouser, which is still like up until recently the biggest crowds we've played to, and we were playing much bigger venues and. The big thing I think we got to do is a record label who, of course, they're superstitious. They think that if you've had a hit, you can have another one. We proved that wrong. But, like, they let us record the Fatty Gets a Stylist album and have a proper budget for it and go back to LA and record it with the same producer that did Curiouser. And Fatty Gets the Stars was like our aim to trick Triple J into playing us.
Right, by having it be anonymous and not put your names and faces to it at the start.
Yeah.
And then turn around and say, aha, surprise.
Yeah.
You thought you got rid of us.
That's what it started as. I mean, of course, it totally grew out of that. But Kate was singing it. It started because Kate sang a song of mine in a deep voice, like a weird voice that didn't sound like her. So we got the idea somehow that would be funny to do. And when we had like 2 songs, and we were just going to do the single, but we kept writing and writing. And then like that idea, we still wanted to do that, but it stopped being the focus of it. We just ended up going, hey, this is like a really fun, like electronic project. And so we saw it through and recorded this whole album, which was, again, immensely freeing because suddenly Kate's got this different voice with a tiny range because she was belting. Usually she's not a belter. And it was lower in her voice. So there was only a range of like an octave or less compared to her usual big range to work with. So that was actually, that constriction was freeing in a weird way because, you know, like in creativity, you take something away. And then also because it was electronic, that led to like exploring all this stuff and listening to like, who are we really into then? Fever Ray and stuff like that, and Goldfrapp, and like that was all our references for that. And it was kind of like after trying to do a commercial pop record and explore all that, it was like going, oh cool, now we're going to do this and explore all that. And it seemed like the sky was the limit. It was again a really lush. I remember in the attic at the London house, you know, check the thing, look at that hit was number 1, go upstairs and work for just all day on the Fatty Gets the Style stuff. And we recorded that, released it. Oh, God, we're idiots. But Nova, like, picked it up. Like, the publicist went to Nova and said, this is a famous singer. Oh, we'll tell you who it is, but you can't say. And they're like, oh, that's great. And so then they start, like, playing it, like, all the time, the first single, and going, you'll never guess who the famous singer behind this one is. And then they were going to run a competition for it and everything. And we did the dumbest thing you can do. Radio play is as rare as hen's teeth, and we demanded that they stop playing it because we didn't want them to do the reveal on Nova. Amazing. So, of course, gladly, we'll stop playing it. Yeah, screw you guys. So they stopped playing it altogether. And and Triple J, like the publicist chickened out at the last minute, like gave it to Kingsmill and then said, oh, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but it's Kate Miller-Heidke. And he's just like, thank you for telling me that. Another band tried that recently. And so, because some other band had done it to get airplay too. And so, not that I don't know if they were going to play it or not, probably not anyway, but it's, you know, it's really hard and he has a job to do. Richard Kingsmill is not the devil. And so then we started touring with Ben Folds because he'd seen the video of Are You Fucking Kidding Me online and then said, oh, that should be cool to support us. And so I think he got us to support it on an Australian tour and then liked it so much as a fit that he got us to do overseas. But then sometime during that, an ad guy found Are You Ready, the Fatty Gets the Styles thing, put it in the New York Lottery ad, and that led to like a bigger income than we'd got from any of the hit music off Curiouser, I think. Just that song just went on for about 5 years, just turning over. It got used for the English version of Netflix, Love Film, and it was on a contract where it had to go up by 20% every couple of I think it was 6 months, and it just kept turning over. They kept renewing it, and so that was like amazing. So the record completely tanked. Nobody listened to it. Someone mocked it for its bong shop artwork. It still makes my blood boil. Like, I love the album
That's
cover
a cool
of that.
Artwork. That's the kid looking down, right?
Yeah, it's got like a big fat guy who meditating and a kid looking down. And if you go back, it's a light bulb. Like, it's the shape of a light bulb.
Oh, okay.
My brother designed that, and I'm really proud of it. But anyway, so that happened, and that was really awesome. And we've made another Fatty record like in the last year, but it's I've done nothing with it, just sitting there.
What circumstances would happen that would get you to release the second Fatty album?
Well, if it got used on an ad or there was some reason to. But I think actually what circumstances would happen is I did just get around to putting it up, and I'm so disorganised, and there's no infrastructure around it. Nobody who's organised cares about it, and I'm disorganised. So I'll probably put it up. There's this service now you can get where it goes. I just did it with the Django Braveheart stuff. I didn't do it. Sorry, Liam, my organised partner, did. Put it up on.
I'll like put on a bunch of services at once.
Yeah, you pay like $200.
I got one of them. I found one you can do it for free, but they take more of the revenue stream.
Ah, okay.
Which for me, like, because I don't expect to ever see any money. I'm like, fine, you can have 30%. 30% of zero is.
Yeah, can you send me the link to that? I'd like.
Yeah.
I want to do that with the Fatty and the new Frankie EP. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I think like a dozen different services, including Spotify and everything. And
wow, awesome.
yeah, I forget what it's called. I'll send you the link though. So the Ben Folds tour, so that was like, what, like 2010-ish?
I honestly don't remember. I just know that it was around that time that the Fatty thing got used in an ad. Yeah, so it was between albums.
And then, there was Night Flight. Mm-hmm. And I think you've told me before the writing process of that was pretty hard on you.
Yeah, that was hell. That was when we were... by that stage, we'd done sort of 2 years of touring with Ben Folds on and off, and Kate and I had been in the same room for like, 24 hours a day, driving around. We were on the tour bus in the end, but before that, we were driving long stretches every day to keep up with the tour and playing every night, 5 nights a week, months and months and months. And also like the looming expectation of doing a follow-up to Curiouser from the record label and people. And and then we came back from London straight to Toowoomba because my grandparents had died and their house was empty with all their stuff in it, and we moved into that house, and we just set about writing that album. And it's I think a dark record. It's got songs about my dead grandfather's car being in the garage there, which it was, humiliation song. It's just like really, and also like, at the time it was just a horrid. Kate and I were not getting along. We were kind of getting along in Toowoomba, but as we came to through the writing process, we were getting along. But as it came to record the record, it was we did not see eye to eye on a lot of stuff, and I was being a complete obnoxious control freak. Because like, I've worked 15 years to be here, I'm damned if I let it slip through my fingers. And so it was just a horrible time in our relationship and a horrible time in general. The Toowoomba floods are somehow sort of part of the landscape of that. When we were in Toowoomba, that all happened. And so anyway, then we came down and recorded that album with Lindsay Gravina, who's like a complete legend. Like, do you know Lindsay?
No.
He worked with Roland S. Howard and his last record.
Pop Crimes.
Yeah. And, did a lot of, had this studio over in Prahran, but the cool end of Prahran, and called Birdland. And, it was like in the 80s music scene around the birthday party and all those guys. And like... we used to joke that he was a vampire, and like, because
there's a whole subset of Melbourne musicians of that age
who
look like they were in the Bad Seeds or the birthday party.
He's
like
one of those dudes.
They dress in suits, like their hairlines, there's a whole vibe of them.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure not all of them could have played with Nick Cave, but it seems like they did.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I don't think he didn't play with Nick Cave, but he was just sort of around, and living in that area at that time.
Yeah.
And also, like, did a lot of stuff. Like, I think he did the Faker stuff and had a lot, did a lot of stuff in the 90s. Oh, no, sorry, that's the early 2000s, I think. Late 90s, early 2000s. Anyway, like, and an amazing ear. And just, like, we hired him because he drum sounds and guitar sounds were just, like, the best that we'd heard of all the producers that we listened to, including, like, lots of American ones. Actually, we started off, we were going to do the record with Chad Blake and then cancelled on him. Oh, man, that was bad. But we didn't know. We were just so emotionally confused. Anyway, we did that album with Lindsay, and no one played it. Like, it was just like, so for a follow-up to a hit record, it was just like, nah. So we hadn't had airplay now for like 4 years, and like, as far as in the public consciousness, I think that was it for Kate. Like, I don't think... Until more recently, when other stuff has happened, maybe with Muriel and stuff like that. I don't know. But, So Nova were like, nah, this is not our music. And of course, Triple J again, like Richard Kingsmill even said, like, yeah, this is good, but we're not going to play it good or bad. Like, you know, it's our decision and we're not going to do it. Anyway, so that happened. And then the next record, Kate was like, it was just like, you cannot work on this record with me. Well, we're not, you know, it's like going to be the record or the marriage basically was like, and she was wise because I was just like, what? No. And, but, you know, I came around to her way of thinking in that she, you know, of course, she's the less emotional one in the relationship, you know, she just has more wisdom about that stuff. And, you know, she was completely bloody right. And not only that, but like, it was just, I don't know, she was completely right. And it would have been a awful, miserable experience. So I did almost nothing on the next record. I think she might have recorded, like, there might have been a couple of songs that I helped write, but honestly, like, I don't think I...
What was that drama? That was that from Night Flight?
Well, yeah, the original incarnation of it, but Drama was a song I'd written, but like, I didn't even play guitar, and I think I played guitar in like two little. It took me like a morning to do my guitar parts on that whole album.
So what were you doing then?
Well, that's the thing. Is so when I realised I couldn't do that, that's when I went, okay, well, Frankie, like, let's go hard with Frankie. And also the other thing is that during that time, after that, all that trauma and especially our creative thing falling out, I had like the worst writer's block that I'd ever had. Like, in fact, I'd never believed in writer's block. Like, to now, if you ask me, I say I don't. But like, I couldn't write normal songs for like, I just couldn't write them. Like, I could come up with ideas and I archived them all, but I just knew that it just for whatever reason. But I sat down and wrote this song as Australian As and went, oh, so I can write comedy songs at the moment still. It's like that I've been spared that. So for some reason, Frankie Walnut can still write songs even though I can't. And so that led to me like going, okay, well, Frankie Walnut album. And then a friend of ours who's a manager had expressed interest in doing that. So I just went, okay. And I went hard with Frankie Walnut and like recorded an album, did the whole release thing and did lots of shows. And so that was during that time was when I really developed that.
So what was the genesis of the Frankie Walnut character? Because I remember, like, at Kate shows, you used to do, like, Where Have I Been All Your Life and the 3-word review, which were kind of... Were they actually in the character, or were they just, oh, and here's this bloke, and he's going to sing the song?
Originally, they weren't in the character, but they were just funny songs that I'd written, like, just through the process of, like, 9 to 5 writing, which is how we've done it since it was my job, like, get up in the morning, write until the evening. So I used to do it, but then Kate's mum actually, it was a time when Transport were Kate's backing band and we were going on a overseas tour and we needed to raise money. So Kate's mum said, why don't you record that, those funny songs that you've got that you do in the middle of the show and try and sell them. So I'm like, oh yeah, wicked. And so I came up with the name Frankie Walnut, just really hurriedly pressed up CDs using the Sony plant because we got it cheap. And then at Port Fairy, I got up and did it as Frankie Walnut in the middle of Kate's thing. And they went like hotcakes. Like people I've never sold so much merch in my life, right? And it was to raise money for the Transport tour. And then it turned out that they all had like, I think it was Shannon Knoll or one of the Sony like idol artists that, because we used the same pressing plant, had like, they'd like not put the new disc on in the master or whatever, and they printed me up like 500 Shannon Knoll discs.
So people bought Frankie Walnut CDs and they had Shannon Knoll on them.
And it was pre-proper internet, so I had no way of like, I was walking around the festival and people were going, man, what was that? Is this some kind of a joke? Like you so
I mean, the crazy thing is, like, that's the sort of thing you would do.
Yeah, I know.
If you had the...
Yeah. That's always the great thing about Frankie Walnut is when stuff goes wrong, is that nothing can go wrong.
No.
It's like at the Woodford Festival where I was so busy I forgot to drop my merch off at the thing and people just go, and then someone even on my site recently, it's terrible, I'm not proud of it, but like someone write that I have a special announcement, and someone wrote, oh, I thought Frankie Walnut had a special announcement, but this link is dead. Typical Frankie. It's just like...
Frankie Wallen doesn't know how links work. Come on, people.
It's got like plausible deniability built into it, but anyway, that really was like a year of performing and learning comedy chops and like being around stand-up comedians too, like doing actual, you know.
Did you do research into comedy?
What I did was I didn't research because I'm just a massive fan. I've always considered it that like, you know, I think like the most amazing art, and I, you know, big fan of it. But it was the first time I'd done gigs on like comedy bills, where as an MC and like 3 stand-ups, and you get up and do that, and that was really, and then also doing that, and then doing comedy in pubs, like opening for bands and stuff, was really interesting too.
What were some of the weird little differences you picked up between, you know, a music gig and a comedy gig?
Well, the big one is that it's a hell of a lot more pressure, and if it's a comedy gig in a music venue, like it's like a comedy gig in a comedy venue, it's kind of okay because there's an expectation that what you're doing is going to be funny. A comedy gig in a music venue can really go wrong because, especially in the early days, because my initial conception of Frankie was that he was a bad musician. So like, I don't know why I did that, but like it was like, no, he's not like me. He can't play the guitar and sing like it. He has to really concentrate to do it. So like people would, really just think I was just terrible, like, and wouldn't get, even though like it's clear. But if you're in a pub and everyone's talking and you can't necessarily hear the words, so that was that was one big thing. Another big thing is that you've got to be really on your game at every second during a comedy. You have to, even if you're singing, and I know that, you know, that you do, with musical comedy, you do have a bit more of a buffer zone there. It's not as raw and you're not as vulnerable and exposed as you would be when you have to talk between the songs. But you still have to make the intention really clear, and you just have to really focus on articulating every line and landing every joke in every song. You have to really be on your game. So it's like it really forces you to be in the moment, which is brilliant. And in a musical gig, if it goes wrong at the end, people will have forgotten about it in 5 minutes, or more importantly, you will. When it goes wrong as a comedy gig, if you've heard the comedians say, it feels like dying. Like it's why they call it that. You want the floor to swallow you up, and it's an amazing feeling.
I've heard a lot of comedians say that it's actually not uncommon to have a really good first gig and a shocking second gig.
Yeah.
And trying to recapture the energy and the response of the first gig is like what drives whole careers.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, chasing the dragon. Yeah. Well, I guess I was lucky in that, you know, I got the most safe debut playing halfway through an audience of Kate Miller-Heidke fans who they are like listening. They're like Woodford audiences. They're listening sensitive. You know, they were a really generous crowd to be able to do 2 songs or 1 song in the middle of a show for a long time before I ever had to do it. And then my first ever gig was at Woodford. So it was like, I was terrified, but like they were just wonderful. And, yeah.
And I guess constructing a whole set of musical comedy must be quite different to either stand-up comedy or to a music set as well.
You don't. It's not. I would never structure it thinking about the songs, how they relate to each other as pieces of music. It's always just structured as per gags. And now I'm sort of comfortable enough with it where I just basically know how I'll start and end and maybe what to do in the middle. But like for 3 songs, and the rest is all just like what I feel like. So I write it down. I write a list of songs so I don't forget what songs I do. But
yeah, I guess like even more like you really have to have their attention at all times, even between songs.
Yeah.
Like you gotta have something funny to say while you're tuning your guitar.
Yeah. It's like everything, but it's just more intense. I just think it's super intense, and you do have to be you are communicating all the time, like I said before, but you do have to.
Is it then commensurately like more validating and rewarding when you really pull it off?
No, it's not. It's just different. Like I think like it's a great feeling to have people laugh at you, like when you meant them to. But it's not. It's certainly no. It doesn't feel. It just feels good in a different way to doing a serious gig, like a cake gig, and it going well. And I wouldn't want to do the comedy thing all the time, because it does become, when you do it a lot of times in a row, it does become, it's getting laughter is only one emotional response, and it's really nice to go back after that and then play like a ballad with Kate and go, it's something totally different, and if it's getting across, it's a different, human response.
I do want to go back. What happened to Transport in the end?
We just we never like officially broke up, but it got to the point with my work with Kate that, we just didn't have time to I didn't have time to do it. Like because there was a period where Kate's thing required a commitment, that was basically full time, and I just couldn't do it. They were just Kate to us, and my life has been like that, save for that period where I didn't have much to do with that album, and the odd tour where we've experimented with me not being Kate's guitarist, which we did for one point, because I've been like, my life and to this day is like, I can make a date with you in 2 months' time to do something, but that's not firm, because if something comes up in Kate's career that needs doing, I'll be there, and that's just the way that's just the way our lives work. Like we pretty much, there's nothing that isn't, there's nothing that's immovable for what, I don't know how to phrase it. Kate's career takes precedence over everything, and my work in that takes precedence over every. It's the.
And that couldn't happen for Scott and Steve when they were also playing.
We couldn't afford to pay them for that to happen,
yeah.
and especially we went on tour overseas for a couple of years basically, and that's when I had to learn to like play the acoustic. I was an electric player before then who delved into the acoustic when I had to, but didn't really like it. And the heart, like, and Scott was replaced pretty early on, from memory. I don't know if he did the arias with us or not. No, he didn't. So it was pre-arias. So he was replaced early. We went away on a Transport tour, and I found out while we were over there that Scott was going to be replaced. And this is a difficult personal situation, but I'm not the boss of the band, and someone new came in, a guy called Ben McCarthy, who's a really good friend of mine who lives in a suburb over now, but like I resented him at first because he just like come in and like, but he became the musical director. He was playing with Pete Murray, and he basically taught us how to do like a show that was like a big pop show to like more than 200 people basically. And then Steve later on, Kate wanted, before Night Flight, wanted to try new drummers, and I was just like, I really didn't want to, and we had big arguments about it. Steve ended up playing on a couple of tracks on Night Flight, but then other people came on, and then we had a totally different band for Night Flight. They're touring for it.
Did you stay in touch with Scott and Steve?
Yeah, and Steve now lives in Melbourne, and I got him an audition for the Muriel's Wedding, the musical, and he played drums for that.
Oh, nice.
And now it looks like he's doing Evita at the moment, and he's coming back to do the Melbourne season of Muriel, so that's really awesome.
Oh, cool.
And Scotty, I don't not as often. I don't we talk on the phone. I see him occasionally, but not as much as I'd like to. Yeah.
Well, do you think, were they bummed that Transport kind of drifted?
I'm sure they were. We've all got matching tattoos.
Wow.
Yeah, we were really serious about it, and we all put in our heart and soul into that band. Yeah, I mean, if they're half as bummed as I am, then they will be really, really bummed.
Getting back to Oh Vertigo, which was the album that Kate did mostly without you.
Yeah.
So that was also when you left Sony.
Yeah.
So was the album recorded before or after you left?
After. It was all after, crowdfunded.
Okay, yeah, and there was an unbelievably successful crowdfunding campaign. Like, you made the money in 3 days. You eventually got, like 200% of your target?
Yeah.
Or something. Were you expecting it to be that successful?
No.
Was it scary leaving Sony?
No. I don't know. It probably was at the time. But, Sony are a big label with different priorities to the kind of thing that an artist like Kate needs. She's not, it became clear, certainly by the time we'd done Night Flight, that, she'd chug away and she wasn't in the red. She'd sell enough records to cover, I think, the budget. But it wouldn't be, Sony are like those big labels. They need a thing to like go astronomical to cover the costs of all the bands that lose money. So someone who sits kind of in the middle, and that's where she was at the time, just doesn't suit their business model. And again, it's like a systemic thing. So getting out of it was good. Yes, it was scary, but I sort of thought that she would be able to make a decent album. And we live in an era where you don't really need that much money to make a good quality recording. But that exceeded expectations, the crowdfunding. I mean, it broke. That was the Australian record at the time. I'm sure it's been broken since then. But like, it was a big thing. It also actually played into being a really interesting, like, journalists for some reason loved the story. So it ended up being actually getting a lot of publicity just from that story. People always still ask about it. So crowdfunding, like Kate was a big expert on it, but it was just
I think it was a bit new then. Like I guess Amanda Palmer would have been another big one at the time when she crowdfunded stuff.
Well, that was it. Yeah, she was the big international one, and I think Kate was the first to do in the public consciousness. Who knows what the actual truth of it is? But these narratives, Well,
I think so because having been a pop artist on a major label, it's very easy to accept a narrative that you creatively you can't take that anymore, and you're gonna strike out and do it independently, and the people will support you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a nice narrative. Yeah.
I'm sure there's some truth to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the thing with Sony is like when we were sending off the singles, like it was just like when we were sending off the songs as we were writing, and we wrote like 50 or 60 for the Night Flight album. We'd send them off and just hear nothing back, and because then they're not listening to the record to see. Some of the best songs that I believe, some of the songs that my favourite songs I've ever written, and are on that Night Flight record. And you'd send those songs off, and it'd just be silence because they don't care if it's a good song. They don't care. They just listen to it and go, "Is this like somebody I used to know? Is this the single?" And that's the single that was out at the time. Killing the World. And it's like the one everyone wanted. And they just go, is that the single? No. And then so they don't bother writing back. It's because they're not interested in anything else. And that and again, it's like it's just they're part of the system that they're stuck within. But it's fans of Kate, they will get off on a song that's a good song, But I get it. I'd love to have another hit, but you can't force it. I mean,
was it difficult to extricate yourself from Sony? Like, were you under a contract for another album or anything?
Yeah, Kate had to get out of a contract, and there were still contractual rules when she left. She wasn't allowed to record, I think, covers of her own songs for 5 years. I think that only recently came up, hence the orchestral album. Yeah.
So Oh Vertigo, like where was that recorded?
That was recorded at the Shed Studios with John Castle. Yeah, who's produced heaps of stuff. But Washington was his big break.
Who in turn kind of, I always thought early on, I think she took a fair bit from Kate.
Oh, I definitely think that she was influenced by Kate. I mean, the other thing is that Washington is a con student at the same time that we were. So... yeah, I mean, it's probably inevitable. There's going to be some parallels there. I think she actually learned a lot from some mistakes Kate made as well.
Right.
Yeah. I like being in control of her content, I think. I reckon she probably did learn from that. I mean, Kate and her were friends. So I'm pretty sure she might have learned a bit about that artwork and all that and the presentation. But, of course, her music is very different to Kate's. She's I was just watching How to Tame Lions on the clip again 3 days ago, and I'm still staggered by that piece of work. I just think it's like I just still get chills when it's just like amazing. Like it's amazing. Yeah.
I'm so fascinated by every new direction she goes.
Yeah.
And it was kind of weird that It seemed like she just dropped off for a while after she did like an album and a half. Because, she had 3 EPs
Yeah.
that were just juggernauts rolling bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and she's a household name. She's still more famous than, like, Kate.
Really?
I reckon, yeah. I mean, I have no idea. I just do the cabbie test, you know.
Yeah.
You just ask the cabbie. If they've heard of them, they're famous.
But she was so interesting because her first album was essentially a greatest hits of her first 3 EPs.
Yeah, well, that's a common model back then. I don't know if it still is, but Wolfmother
Yeah.
were the same. And
That's true, yeah.
some other bands. Well, she was probably overseas trying to make it. I know that's what we were doing after the first big hit. Yeah.
So all this time, were you still playing in like Kate's band when she toured over Vertigo?
Yes, I played in Kate's band for all the O Vertigo stuff. We were a duo by then. Like I don't think the O Vertigo really had a band to it. We might have done a couple of bands in capital cities, but we realised we did so much touring together in those few years after Curiouser that as a duo we kind of feel like we can be more powerful as a duo than we can often with a band. Simply because you play like anything, the 10,000 hours. It's one of the things Ben Folds said too. Is it like, I mean, he just said like, the reason that a lot of Australian bands take a long time to become really good, and American bands seem to be pre-formed like that, is just simply because American bands starting out have the option of literally playing endlessly. Like if you're prepared to tour in America, you can play, sleep. There's the infrastructure there. Like most of the venues, even small ones, will feed you, or like when I say small, I mean smallish. But like they, showers. Like you can even stay in Walmart car parks now. And you can tour America and basically do a big city and then drive half an hour down the road to another big city, and that's insane. Like that, and then as you do that, you become fused, and there's a musical connection that Kate and I got after we did that as a duo, so many hours that on stage, and that you can't do anything. You can't replace stage hours with anything with practice, and we're just fused and more powerful. And we know that as a duo, we can pretty much get up in any environment and do some quality, and with a band. In Australia, you will do like it's just the distances and the money that we can make an act of our size means that we'll just get to the end of the tour at about 2 or 3 weeks and go, the band's just starting to feel good, we're just starting to feel good. I can stop thinking now and relax and play. Whereas now, we can get up cold and do a show with the two of us. Plus, it's just amazing the things you have access to as a duo, the silence you can use and the intuition between each other, even when you're playing a song you've played 1,000,000 times.
So I guess one of the other pretty unique things about Kate's career is that she's also kind of kept a toe in the opera and theatre worlds, because that was such a big part of her story from the start, was that this is a trained opera singer making pop music.
Yeah.
So people still think of her when they want to do an opera.
Yeah.
So like she did like the Jerry Springer opera, and then the Rabbits.
Yeah, she did the Jerry Springer opera, and that led to some other stuff in London, and then getting a London opera agent. And yeah, that's one of those annoying things. Like that Sony. I remember them saying, "Great story. She's got a great story." Yeah, opera, and I remember it being really annoying at the time, but it actually it's worked in her favour because it meant she's had opportunities. So she ended up, performing at Covent Garden with the English National Opera and at the Met in New York. Then, Opera Australia got her to do the Rabbits, that Sean Tan adaptation, which led to Muriel's Wedding. But the Rabbits was Opera Australia, knowing that Kate did that and being familiar. I mean, she did stuff for Opera Queensland before, and Opera Australia did Jerry Springer, but they know that she's a composer from the pop stuff.
Did you work on the Rabbits at all?
Not really, no. I mean, I played guitar in the pit, and it was amazingly cool. But it was like took about a chops workout. But that was no. I was just like there in the background. She was writing, and she'd ask my advice here and there, and I did like sort of ghostwrite a little bit of one of the songs. But honestly, no, that was like a total. I just came in on the guitar. Kate forced me to, and like I was like, oh no, again, like Kate persuading me to do something that was good for me,
At what point did you start writing songs again together?
Muriel's wedding, I think. I don't think we wrote anything together before that.
Was that like a really conscious, okay, we can, enough time's gone by, we can flip that switch back on?
No, yeah, we kind of felt like that we'd done enough, and we were playing together again. So we'd been touring together again. And then I think we had written like Beard Downstairs for Christmas, the Beards one. We'd written that together. But when the Muriel thing came, and it was sufficiently, it's sufficiently distant from writing a Kate Miller-Heidke record that it was like there's less sort of personal stuff at stake because we're writing for characters, and so we figured we could do it, and it was awesome. Yeah.
There must have been a whole other set of pressures though, because that's such a beloved Australian film to like adapt it, and you've got, what do you do with all the ABBA music, all these decisions?
Yeah, it was absolutely terrifying in the beginning. Actually, it was terrifying right up to the end until we saw that it was received well. I mean, we were happy with the work, but it's an immense it's just an insanely different world. And, and it was like when we started, Kate knew a lot more about theatre, having done those big productions in opera and written The Rabbit. So she was aware of the whole world. I wasn't. And the songwriting for that drew on everything that we'd learned individually and together, in every aspect. So it's weird, you do those things in hindsight and go, everything happens for a reason. I don't believe that only, but I do believe you can definitely reinterpret stuff like that. And I feel that way about, all the Frankie Walnut work I did, learning to write music humorously and present it, all played into the way that we wrote the Muriel stuff. And so did all of, the different eras of songwriting that we had together, all of it, in different eras of Kate's stuff and the Transport stuff, all of it. Like there's melodies in Muriel's Wedding, the musical, that are from Transport, like one of them is from a song I wrote for Transport that we didn't play.
Wow.
And I mean, it's really exacting too. It really teaches you another level of craft, because it's like before anything happens, like say there's one song in it where the person has to walk in the door. You have to be introduced to the character of Muriel's dad. You have to this is within a song. You have to show that he's trying to impress these potential investors, that he bullies his kids, that Muriel is a dreamer, that Bill ignores his wife and she's down, put down, that he's having an affair with this other woman, and that by the end of the entire thing that that he's a massive egomaniac who's capable of corruption, manipulation. So you get, and these are the rules before you've even, played a single note. Is it all those, and you have to be true to every character in everything they sing, and you have to have a song that can be a platform for a dance number, because this is the first big showstopper, and you have to make a piece of music. Like, I mean, it still has to be a piece of music that people can enjoy. So that's that was amazing. Like, like I thought at times that I was going to lose my mind. But yeah.
Did you go back and watch or listen to any particular musicals to kind of get a feel for how you got to structure one?
I read a book called How to Write Musicals. And that stopped me making a complete ass of myself, even though I did many times in the early days at the creative meetings. We watched as many musicals as we could.
Were there any in particular that you found really good models?
Not models so much. In the end, it just went back to what, to me, it just goes back to I've loved Annie ever since I was 8 years old. It was the first thing I ever saw in VCR. Everything's in that. Like everything that needs to be in a musical is in that, from, the I Wish song at the beginning. And so in the end, I think it's good to know all that stuff and, watch everything and be familiar with the world. But I think you do revert back to what's in your musical DNA.
You and Kate had a kid a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So did not touring and being in a band, was that part of the reason why you started doing more of this writing stuff? Is it better for raising a small kid?
A happy coincidence. I think Kate got pregnant. No, Kate was pregnant and performing in the Rabbits, and we both were when we had the first meeting about Muriel. So Muriel came after the pregnancy, and Kate and I had always wanted to write a musical together anyway. So that was just lucky. And it was lucky that for the year and a half that was like the pregnancy in the first year of Ernie's life or whatever, is that we got to be at home or in workshops where we weren't performing, and we got paid. So, I mean, I re-enrolled. I enrolled to do a PhD, which I'm still doing, but at the same time, because I thought that was it from when she was pregnant, and it was like, so you look at where we were then. It was like, I hadn't recorded the record, like Kate's last record. I was touring with her, but like, I wasn't 100% necessary. I had a lot of downtime. I wasn't going to do Frankie, and it was just like, well, I may end up being a lecturer or teacher and not a muso, which was a horrible thought, but oh well. And so
Why is that a horrible thought?
Because it's just not. Look, I'm not denigrating people who are lecturers or teachers at all. I think they're awesome. But oh my Christ, I hope I don't have to do it. I mean, I was a guitar teacher for years. It's just not my. I'm fine to do it. There's way worse jobs. But compared to being a muso, like actually getting to write and play music, play guitar for a living is just like that's the awful thing about it is that you know what it's like, and how good it is. To go back when I've been conditioned in a certain way. But I don't think it would be as bad now having had a kid for a couple of years. He's conditioned me in a completely different way. I don't know.
What's your PhD about?
It's about the persona in songwriting. Yeah, so it's really about the romantic ideology being collapsed by applying the concept of persona within the songwriting process. Does that make sense? I'm supposed to be able to sum it up in 2 sentences.
What do you mean, the romantic idea?
So the romantic ideal of songwriting has the genius sitting alone in their garret composing a song through the dark hours while the lightning and thunder goes outside, and they have neurotic thoughts and they shiver and then they starve and die in a ditch, which came about, with the rise of the Industrial Revolution. That romantic notion started to become really, really important to people. Because I think there was a hunger to reconnect with nature. Well, that is infused, and we've even spoken about it today. But it's through every element of the music industry, and I think people who are aspiring songwriters really take it on board, like performers and songwriters.
That they have to appear to be in pain.
Well, not even that they have to appear to be in pain, but that it's to do with like the tortured artist. It's like. The tortured artist is accessing their deepest self to give to work on a work in isolation of individual genius. That they will like look at the people who are like Lou spoke about before, like say Nick Cave, Neil Young. So I use those people,
Joni Mitchell,
Patti Smith,
yeah.
Joni Mitchell. You have this idea of a certain. It's a romantic ideal of art that has that their true which is good, but there's an element of when that butts up against the professional realities of being a songwriter. You can't lie in bed until 2:00 in the afternoon, then have a shot of scotch and write your next song. I mean, I know some people do, but I'm telling you, those people that do go through phases of that, and they don't like the realities of it are very. And I don't care who you're talking about. My whole thing is about the PhD is about examining the area of creative theory that has to do with songwriting. And there's a guy called Csikszentmihalyi who's like the hardest spelt name in the world, Csiszk something. But anyway, he's like the guy that popularized the term flow. You've probably heard of that, and he wrote a book. He's written more popular books about flow, but he's a really respected academic. And he talks about how any creative act is just the individual is only 1/3 of a triangle. The other two sides of which are the domain, which is all the existing work within that particular field, or what we'd call field, and the field. And the field is the gatekeepers. So, field, domain, and the individual. And those three things are what creates a new piece of work. So when somebody comes along and writes a new piece of work, the field, the gatekeepers, the critics, the fans, the media, they'll either accept that into the domain or they won't. And if it's not accepted into the domain, take transport. So like we do our little work. The field being like, Triple J, they let us in to the domain for a little while. And then we got some good street press, we got some good reviews, we got some press, and then it looked like we might be adopted into the domain. Ultimately, we weren't. And then in his definition, that wasn't a creative work. So this is an academic definition of it that's based on Darwinian.
Right.
Yeah, it's based on the Darwinian principle. Because when you look at something, when you zoom in on what a cultural work is, I mean, what is a culture? I mean, I can create something now, we just did, but if it doesn't change the culture around it, well, what is it?
I think it's still a work.
Yeah, but it's a definition that can be
it's
like
a definition
replicated.
That's based on its impact on the world around it, I suppose. So like if I write a poem at home in my alcove and I never show it to anyone, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
According to this definition.
Well, according to this definition, which is an academic definition. So like, yeah. And I can see that we've just gone down this path, and it's like this is the annoying thing about people who are doing postgrad is you can just. I want to talk about it now forever. I could talk about it forever, but I can't because I'm going to run out of time. Oh my god! Yeah.
Do you need to be somewhere?
No, I don't. But
okay.
I've got I have a soft deadline of work I have to do this afternoon.
Well, we'll wrap up. I just wanted to ask. So what is in the future for you and Kate musically? Like, are you going to be doing more theatre, opera stuff? Are you going to do a new album?
Well, so we're in the middle of writing a new album at the moment.
Her new single came out today.
Did it?
Yeah, Zero Gravity.
Oh yeah, that's our Eurovision entry.
Eurovision one. Yeah.
Did it come out today?
It did.
Oh, nobody told me. Oh, good. Yeah. Well, that's yeah. So we're working on a new record. That Zero Gravity's, I don't know how indicative it is of the rest of the record, but maybe it is, because we haven't recorded the record yet. But we're working on a new record, so yes, obviously we're writing together again, and it's really fun. And then we'll tour that this year, and we're looking for a story to turn into a musical, and we've been furiously doing that since, I don't know, last year. The beginning of last year, we just haven't found one that we like yet. So
I had an idea when I was because I was really into dinosaurs as a kid.
Yeah.
Because as I think a lot of people in my generation are, I was 7 when Jurassic Park came out.
Yeah, man.
So my dad used to buy me, there was this dinosaur magazine that came out like once a month. You'd get it from the newsagent. And at the start, like the first 50 issues or so came with like a piece of a T-Rex skeleton, and you assembled it and it glowed in the dark.
Cool.
And then eventually you could like order the skin for it and paint it.
Awesome.
And all this stuff. So it had like, dinosaur facts, and like some of it was in the form of like a graphic novel, and there was like more text stuff about paleontologists. And there's this one story I was always drawn to about these two paleontologists in America in the 19th century. It was Cope and Marsh, they were called. And it was there was a time period called the Bone Wars, where they were in competition to see who could unearth the most dinosaur bones and identify the most new dinosaurs.
That's awesome.
There's a huge period, like out in Wyoming and Montana, they were finding huge, like really well-preserved areas where you could find dinosaur bones. You could trip over them, basically.
Amazing.
But it got really dramatic because they started as friends.
Yeah.
This is like just post-Civil War, I think. But their rivalry got so intense, they essentially became like crime bosses. They had like gangs who would go out and like steal bones from each other's dig sites, destroy bones.
What?
And there was so much drama, and I always thought it would make an amazing musical.
Wow, yeah.
So there's one for free, Keir.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah. That's good. I can't believe no one's turned that into something.
Oh, yeah. There have been books written about it.
Have they?
But
Never
a movie.
What a great movie, too.
Like yeah. It's just a classic.
It's like Indiana Jones, but with like real just yuckiness.
Yeah, and like they both used really underhanded tactics. Like neither of them, walked away covered in glory. I think they both died in poverty.
Oh my God.
Actually.
So brilliant.
Yeah. Oh, well, Keir, thank you so much for talking today.
It's been a pleasure. Sorry for talking about myself so much.
That was the point.
Yeah, I know, but it's interesting to do it for that long. I don't think that's incredible.
Cheers.
It's gonna take my ego a while to recover from that.
All right, Keir, what song are you going to play?
I used to be cool. I used to know the names of all the indie bands. I used to give the finger every time I saw the man. I used to laugh at policemen. I used to swear at nuns. I used to fight. I used to strut. I used to flirt. I used to rut. I used to be cool. 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 I used to take narcotics with my friends and stay up late. Now we talk about inflation and how we're losing weight. I used to love to argue, always taking the bejesus. Now instead of picking fights, when I get drunk, I pick cheeses. I used to live on chips. I used to pierce my tongue and lips. I used to dance. I used my hips. But now I use a juicer. I used to be cool. 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 I used to go woo. I used to go woo. I used to go woo. Woo. I used to go, oh yeah, woo. I used to go woohoo. I used to go woo. I used to worry about my style and if I was fitting in. Now I lounge around in my dressing gown eating beans straight out of the tin. I used to go to clubs I'd hate. Now I love staying at home. I used to know a lot of posers. Now they're blocked from my phone. I use a dick. I used to think I was a player. I was a half-cooked lasagna of a person, but with not as many layers. Layers, layers. I used to be cool. 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 I used to go woo. I used to go woo. Woo. I used to go woo. That's wicked. I used to go, oh, wicked man. I used to go, oh, that's interesting. I used to go woo. I used to go, yeah, come on, everybody. Let's just have a good time. I used to party hard. I used to party. I used to party hard. I used to party. I used to party hard. I used to party, now I sleep.
Thanks, Keir.
No worries. I fudged one line. It was, I was a dick.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Yeah, do you want me to do it again?
Just say it now.
I was a dick.
That was, okay, great. Thank
Thanks.
you. If you want to hear more of Keir's music, the Frankie Walnut album, The Frankie Walnut Reflective Drink Coaster, is available online, presumably not as a bait and switch for a Shannon Knoll album. And Keir also made a short podcast series in character as Frankie called Frankie Walnut's Harvest of Memories, which is very funny. Keir's instrumental acoustic guitar duo Django Braveheart has an EP out called For Whom the Jazz Tolls. And Muriel's Wedding, that Keir co-wrote with Kate, will be playing in Melbourne from March through to May at Her Majesty's Theatre, and then in Sydney from June to August at the Sydney Lyric Theatre. No Brisbane dates as of yet, and I assume most of you listeners live in Brisbane. I don't know. Perhaps by the time the alien archaeologists find this recording in the ruins of what was once southeast Queensland, perhaps you'll all be on Mars. Perhaps you'll all be living in the Martian cages. Don't know. Since this podcast was recorded, Kate Miller-Heidke won the national competition to represent Australia in the 2019 Eurovision Song Contest with her song Zero Gravity. She will be performing at the main event in May in Tel Aviv, Israel, and I believe it will be broadcast on SBS. Obviously, it would have been great to also talk to Kate on the podcast, but she was in Europe at the time of recording, doing some artsy things, something to do with virtual reality and cameras. I'm not sure. Corrections and amendments for this episode. Is there a major dental school based in Toowoomba? I could find no evidence of this. Don't know why I thought that, but if nothing else, I am accountable for my misstatements on this podcast. The Earth is flat. American folk musician Christina Olson was until fairly recently still conducting songwriting workshops at Woodford. The last one was in 2017, as far as I can tell. She continues to tour, mostly playing shows in North America and Europe throughout 2018. Her most recent album, Sweet Stillness, was released in 2016. The music distribution service I use is called Rootnote, Routenot. And while the site can be a bit slow to use, the free plan will get your music onto Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Google Play Music, and a bunch more. And it does it in an automated way that is very convenient for lazy people like me who hate promoting their music. In return, Rootnote takes 15% of any revenue generated by the people streaming your music. They do also offer a plan where you can just pay up front to upload your music, but you get to keep 100% of revenue. So it's like a trade-off. The dinosaur magazine I read as a kid was called Dinosaurs by Orbis Publishing and ran 104 issues from 1992 to 1995. The great scientific rivalry known as the Bone Wars between paleontologists Edward Drinker Cope and Othniel Charles Marsh has been the subject of several books, as well as the fictionalized graphic novel Bone Sharps, Cowboys and Thunder Lizards by Jim Ottaviani, and an episode of the TV show Drunk History. And as it turns out, in April 2017, a not-for-profit theatre company called Punctuate Theatre, based in Edmonton, Alberta, produced a musical version of the Bone Wars story aimed at children. It was called The Bone Wars, The Curse of the Pathological Paleontologists, and it was written by Matthew Mackenzie with music composed by Laura Raboud. Before the Bone Wars, there had only been 9 named species of dinosaur discovered in North America, and between the two of them, Cope and Marsh discovered a further 136 new species from 1877 to 1892, including the Stegosaurus, the Diplodocus, and the Triceratops. It's a really fascinating story of scientific discovery and personal tragedy, and I still think it could bear to have another musical written about it, perhaps for adults on a larger scale. I really like dinosaurs. Thank you for listening to this podcast. There are 50 more just like it in the databanks. You can listen to it wherever you get podcasts. And if you can't find it on your dingle doodle of choice, then send me an email at gimmeempathypodcast@gmail.com. Or if you have a feedback, you can hit me up there, or on Facebook, or on Instagram, at Gimme Empathy Podcast. I got to catch up with Keir just this past weekend. I was down in Melbourne again doing a show with Harley Young and the Haymakers. Keir took me along to a coffee dispensary. I call it dispensary because to call it a cafe would not do justice to the product that they are administering in this location. I'm not a coffee drinker. I'm a tea drinker at most, and there was some blends of steep potency there, let me tell you. But it was great catching up with Keir. And Harley Young and the Haymakers have some more shows coming up. We've just launched our second album, Little Songs for Big People. It's up online now. And we're doing some dates with my other band, We'll Want To, also launching an album. It's all so confusing, I know. But basically, if you want to see me playing bass or guitar, come along to Black Bear Lodge in Brisbane on the 15th of March. Sonic Sherpa Records on the 16th of March, which is just Harley, not We'll Want To. But then again that night, the 16th, at Golby's Basement in Ipswich, that is both bands. Or then the 17th of March at the Bison Bar in Nambour. And these will probably be the last shows that myself and drummer Ash and bass player Ange play with Harley. He has a new band down in Melbourne. We got to hang out with a few of them on the weekend. They're all lovely people, so very much looking forward to that. But come see these last couple shows with the Brisbane incarnation. Thanks again for listening. I'll catch you next time. I'll Till next time, stay jittery. Jitter jitter.